What's good, y'all? I am one of your co-hosts for today, Kodey Stauffer.
And I'm the other one, Coach V.
Gosh, I don't know how I feel about you saying the other one, but regardless, let's jump into this. We are continuing our top 5 seniors by position in the state of Colorado, class of 2024 here, and this edition will have the safety position here, which is always a fun one to evaluate, and Coach V and I were talking before this recording about how different this one is, since normally there's some very hard hitters, and this year, while there are flashes of hard hitting, this one has a lot more finesse and ball hawks and catch radiuses involved in this one. And so with this list, I do want to point out here, because I can already see the comments, where the heck is Rex Guthrie? He's one of the top rated prospects in Colorado. Well, there is a minimum game requirement for all of our top 5 lists. It's 8 games played, so that gives you enough to play, 80% of the regular season. And then obviously, if you miss time in the regular season and your team makes the playoffs, that still gives you a chance to catch up and hit that game requirement. And this is true for across the board. Not sure if we've announced it in other episodes, but that is the rule. 8 games played for any of these seniors to be considered in the top 5. It's not a jab at anybody who did not get to play or had an injury or anything like that. That is just what we feel is fair to evaluate as far as a sample size or workload. And it gives us more chances to see these players play live, which all of us have seen these players play live, whether it was one of us two or whether it was somebody on the podcast and relaying information as well. And with our honorable mentions, the same was true. So, and this time, this is the first year at Playmakers Corner for the class of 2024. So in our 4th, graduating year, I should say, of players being evaluated by us and us making these episodes, we are going to consider players for multiple positions this year. We feel that it's the most accurate way to represent the talent that Colorado has if players can play multiple positions and are graded at multiple positions for the next level. So, if you hear a name here and you're like, oh no, they're not going to be able to make another list. Not this time. We're switching it up, which I think is important to announce for our, this is kind of general housekeeping top 5 stuff. But all of that being said, we can get a little bit more specific on what we are looking for from the safety position here. We evaluated a lot of safeties, honestly. I mean, I watched probably like 10 or 11 guys. And, just like scouts, if your film doesn't catch our eye immediately, we're on to the next one. So I think that is something to consider. There are obviously a lot of great talents at this position. And, I think that we've buckled down a little bit on how harshly we are grading, and we're being a little bit more honest. So do receive this feedback from our notes and these grades with open ears, because that is what is going to best help you on the next level. And for these grades, we have 10 categories graded on a scale of 1 to 10. Those grades reflecting of 1 to 3 being needs improvement should be a priority for this player, but could get you benched. Not very good. 4 to 6 is average, so it's like serviceable, I think is the best way to put it, but it's not necessarily an asset, but it's not a liability all the time, but average can be a liability on the next level, which is worth noting. And then 7 to 8 is above average to good. This is kind of like 2 to 3 stars. This is, a skill that they have. It could use a little bit of improvement compared to like what perfect could look like, but it's ultimately not the worst issue to have in the world. It's more of a minor thing to work on compared to some other skills. 8 to 9 is good to great. That's 3 to 4 star talent. This is, oh my God, they're making plays utilizing this skill, and it's a nightmare for other teams to deal with. So that is, like I said, 3 to 4 star. And even when they mess up, it's still not the worst thing in the world. They can still make a play. And then 9 to 10, very good to elite. 4 to 5 stars, consistently perform it at a top level and stands out. And yeah, I think that is kind of that. Well, that's the gist of it. And we have 10 categories: man coverage ability, zone coverage ability, top end speed, agility / hip fluidity, hit power, pass contest consistency, ball skills, height/frame, block shedding ability, run defendability. We add all those up at a scale of 1 to 10, and then that gives us a score out of 100, and that is the overall grade. We have notes for all of those as well, and in addition to that, there was a valuation done of KJ Bolden and Simon, help me out. Is it Xavier Filsame? Is it Filsame? Is that how you say it?
Xavier Filsame, I'm pretty sure. Out of McKinney. Shout out my boy Javier. But yeah, both 5 stars. KJ Bolden, he's committed to FSU. Went to Buford in Georgia. That's a perennial powerhouse. And then Xavier, like I said, went to McKinney, who's not a perennial powerhouse. They were horrible when I was there, but they've made a nice little comeback here, and he's been a big part of their success over at McKinney. He is going to rival Florida. So there you go. Use those guys as baselines when evaluating these other guys, which does contribute to the honesty that we have. And like Kodey said, if your film doesn't catch your eye, especially compared to watching these 2 guys before, then it is what it is.
Yeah, no. So that has kind of helped us quite a bit with how we are grading everything. And yeah, it makes me excited to take a look at that with kind of a different perspective and talking to Coach V about it. So with all of that being said, we have our top 5 seniors here list ready to go. Strengths, areas of improvement, frame, notes, everything like that. So, Coach V, you mind if I introduce this first guy here, seeing as how he is a Centennial League participant who I've gotten to watch every single year of his playing career?
Yeah, go for it. You got it.
Yeah, so this first guy here, and by first guy I mean the number 5 ranked safety in the class of 2024 for Colorado from PMC here is Cam Chappa out of Eagle Crest High School. This guy has been, like I said, making plays on the football field since his sophomore year and has plenty of film to review. I watched his junior year and then his senior year personally. I do kind of like watching things sequentially like that, so that way if there's any areas of improvement from his junior to senior year, I can take into account that growth as well. But for Cam Chappa here, you know, the 6 foot, 175 pound safety out of Eagle Crest, he's had plenty of chances to make a name for himself. Eagle Crest is usually a place that gets pretty good, you know, reviews at the defensive back position, and I doubt he'll be the last guy that we talk about, you know, for the class of 2024 across other positions for Eagle Crest as well. They had themselves a solid season, and it started with the consistency in the back end and kind of building around him, you know, in the offseason. It's weird to say building around him, but that's the truth for the Raptors here. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about things that he did well this season. And for me, one of the things that carries him is his athleticism here. I have his agility/hip fluidity rated at a 9 and his top end speed rated at an 8.9. You know, he plays center field, quote unquote, a lot. And, you know, being a ball hawk is a primary strength of, you know, his. And, you know, he has the speed to close in on plays very quickly. His ball skills as well, I have rated at an 8.5, just because he can cover a lot of ground and he baits quarterbacks all of the time. You would think by the time he was a senior and people had watched film on him that they would not fall for it, but they still fell for it just because, you know, that gap that he kind of allowed to be created between him and receivers, he'd allow to get a little bit bigger every single year, and then quarterbacks would think that somebody's open, and he just closes that gap and makes a play on the ball. And, you know, whether that's getting an interception or whether that's contesting a pass, he does a great job. Receivers or anybody downfield, really, not really the kind of safety who's giving up big plays over the top with his speed and with his agility. Being able to change direction very fast and get on his horse. And like I said, getting back there and making plays. So, and then, you know, while it's not listed as, you know, one of his top categories, he does have one of the higher man coverage abilities ratings here at a 7.5, because there are times where he's on a player and he runs their route better than the receiver who's running a route and makes a better play on the ball. So just very aggressive, very agile, which I think helps him out quite a bit there. So while he's not asked to do that a whole lot in the time and chances and snaps that he does, it looks pretty good and is the second highest rated category on here out of all of the safeties in that man coverage ability spot. Now, his zone coverage ability sits at an 8.5 for me because that is his bread and butter and the thing that he does very, very well. Now, Coach V, sorry, I'm going to just keep rambling here and just kind of talk about some areas of improvement at the same time, switch it up just a little bit, just because, he does have a solid ability of ripping at the ball and, alleviating some of the tackling pressure that he has. Just because he doesn't have super high hit power, it's sitting at a 5.8, which is actually the lowest out of anyone on this list. But because of his ability to, punch the ball out or get his helmet on the football and force plays and even scoop up the football and make plays following that, that does alleviate a little bit on his run defendability that I have at a 6.7. Once again, not his biggest strength, as he does usually wait for players to come up to him. But, he does see the field well. He sees the running lanes. He knows where the running back is going to be heading. He has good angles, and he has the speed to still make plays in the run game, but isn't necessarily the strongest run defender here. So I think that between that and his reaction time to run plays, sometimes he just waits too long. And like I said, waits for the play to come to him. And he doesn't really run up in the box, which is why his block shedding ability here is at a 4.2. I mean, he can avoid blockers with speed and agility, but I have never seen him get his hands up to protect himself from a block in-game or over his film. And that does worry me, against teams on the next level that can run the ball. And I think it does limit him pretty significantly as a safety here. And, we know where he's heading next. And in that conference, there are teams that run the ball very well. And that is a little bit of a red flag here, which is why we have it marked at that. And then, the last category that I haven't given a number to is his height/frame. 7.7, 6 foot, 175. I'd say that he is a bit on the lighter side here. And I would like to see him bulk up a bit. But, it's not we've seen worse coming straight out of high school and going to the next level at the safety position. And with his athletic prowess, it's, it is something where he will get bigger, and I'm not concerned about him addressing it. It's just right now, as a high school going to the next level prospect, not, the best frame that we have on this list. So, Coach V, I know that I just rambled on and on and on and on and on here, but let's hear your take on Cam Chapa out of Eagle Crest. The good, the bad, the great, the ugly, and everything in between.
Yeah, let's do it. So, the things I really like about Cam Chapa, I mean, we agree about a lot of things here, but the things I really like is that he's super agile. I mean, 8.6 grade, that's what I gave him. That is tied for the highest out of the top 5 safeties on this list. And I really feel like that allows him to do a lot. He's a great cover safety out there, switches directions extremely well, very smooth athlete. I believe that allows him to contest as many passes as possible, just being able to break on that ball, and the rest from there, he gets a hand on it, right? And he's disruptive, or he goes and picks it off. But that agility really allows him to make a lot of plays and bait a lot of athletes, a lot of quarterbacks to throw it his way. And so that's definitely a strength that I think is going to translate extremely well into the next level. That's also why I gave him an 8.6 for zone coverage. I mean, he is very reliable out there. He's going to make plays, plain and simple, and he's going to hold it down in that back end. So gotta love that. I do want to talk about his ball skills real quick before talking about some of the other stuff. I gave him an 8.7 here. I mean, he just has really good hands. If he gets a chance, he's going to try to pick it off, and then from there, he's pretty dangerous as well. But he's definitely somebody who has pretty good hands out there, could catch from multiple angles, make tough contested catches as well, play a little receiver out there. And they actually did play a little receiver on offense, which I think helps him out a lot. But all those things really makes him into a safety that is a really good cover safety. That's somebody that, is going to be really difficult to test downfield. So there you go there. Now, talking about some things he could work on, I mean, we have the same things Basically, it's just run defendability and block shitability. I think if he gets bigger, that's going to improve, right? I'd like for him to get more physical, get more involved in the run game, just because he wasn't as much, I felt, in high school. But on the next level, you got to get involved here, you know? And I think once he adds on more weight to that frame, he'll be in a much better spot here. You know, he's at 170. That's fine for now, but I would feel better if he was at 190, obviously, or even closer to 200 as well, if possible. Because I think if he is at that weight, then, you know, he's just going to be able to do much more there. Because in the run game, I mean, he doesn't get bullied around. But, you know, if a lineman gets their hands on him, I'm not completely confident that he's going to be able to just shed that super easily. You know, even if it is a slower lineman and he has faster hands. So that's definitely a little bit of an issue, but you know, I think going to the next level, that'll be pretty easily fixed here. Bottom line is that Cam Chapa, he's a great cover safety out there who's going to hold down the back end and will thrive in a system that has a great pass rush or has produced great pass rushes. Now, before we talk about that, just want to go down the line, talk about my other grades real quick. Gave him a 7.5 for man coverage, 8.2 for top end speed. I kind of feel like he could be a little bit faster as far as top end speed goes. I feel like the agility kind of covers up some of that, but that's all right. It is what it is. Hit power, 7.5. Height frame, 8.1 there. And so my overall grade for him is a 78.8 here. Kodey, what's your overall grade and how does he kind of project moving forward for you?
Yeah, so my overall grade for Cam Chapa is a 75.3, so pretty solid 2-star rating. And between your overall grade of a 78.8, that has him sitting at a 77.05 and obviously at our number 5 spot. And we do know that his next destination is to UNCO, the University of Colorado, kind of a program in flux right now. A lot of different moving parts and pieces. So I honestly think for Cam Chapa, while I don't think he's ready to get snaps sooner than later, I think that demand and opportunity might come for him sooner. And so I think that he's going to be a player that is going to be tested quite a bit and thrown through the fire. You know, I think that I do think that he has that next level, that D1 kind of FCS capabilities. Obviously, you know, he had an offer to Lindenwood as well and CSU Pueblo. And he also had Emporia, which, you know, recruits very well in Colorado, honestly, and Eagle Crest especially. So, you know, I do think that he has that upside. And if you use him, you know, to his strengths as a safety, more as like a free safety, and have him playing pass, not exclusively, but more exclusively, I think that you're going to get a good football player. I think that he might underestimate the speed of, you know, opposing receivers initially, and there's going to be a learning curve there. But I do think that he's somebody who can adapt and make plays and get interceptions and force turnovers on the next level, more so through the air. And I think that, you know, his ability to play decent man coverage opens up opportunities for him to be kind of that dollar or even that, like, you know, quarter kind of safety, that third safety that can be subbed in and play, you know, kind of in those lower zones and man up against like those slot receivers and whatnot on those shorter routes. So I think that there's going to be opportunity, but I am interested to see how he does deal with some adversity, honestly, because I think that there is plenty of that and growing pains on the horizon for him. But the way that he reacts is going to determine how good of a college player that he is. Which, I mean, is the truth of every college player. But I do think that the things that he has to work on do need some more significant work to be like, you know, a higher level, like all conference or any kind of level like that player on the next level. Is that a fair assessment? Am I being a little too harsh? Or do you see any problems with that projection as somebody who's also familiar with where the UNCO program is?
Well, I do want to say this, just knowing Northern Colorado and what they have going on here. I feel like as far as the safety position goes, they're trying to move away from that big thumper in the box, someone who's going to come down and make a lot of plays, and into somebody who's more finesse and could hold out or hold down that back end while, corners go into man and, they try to run a couple different things up front with the pass rush we have. So I don't know if he's going to need to develop that much, get stronger, get more involved and whatnot when he has kind of what they're looking for, more of a finesse safety out there that could blanket the field. And so he might get playing time, not because, just out of necessity, but he fits the system a lot better than some of the other guys who have entered the transfer portal and even got moved from safety to linebacker because they just didn't fit the mold of safety that their defense was looking for. And so I really do think that he could play sooner than later. You'll probably still need a year to adjust and all that, but I kind of feel, with what they might be asking of him, they're not going to ask him to do too much man here, but you could see a lot more cover one looks, and that's where he'll fit in. And as far as man goes, he's not that bad. I mean, depending on the matchup, I think he could hold his own, and you could kind of, disguise him against some, slower, weaker matchups in man if it's really that big an issue, which I don't think it will be. But, for the most part, I think he's going to fit the system really well, and that's going to go a long way in him getting playtime sooner than later. And that's just my personal opinion, knowing Northern Colorado and kind of, the direction they're going with their defense and team in general. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do think that we will see that shift. That's a good point, and that kind of has been the status quo. And if there's one way to go the completely opposite direction, it is Cam Chappa, who, I kind of think he's similar to a player that we evaluated a few years ago as far as being like a truly good pass coverage safety. And, his athleticism, I think, is going to hold up on that level of football. And, there are going to be opportunities for him. And I think that, he will make plays. But there is, still work to be done. Get into that weight room and watch that film and whatnot. And, I think that when they play to his strengths, and if they are shifting a different direction, I think that this is a great player and opportunity to do so.
Sweet. Excited to see him in that blue and yellow this next year, man. His teammate, also spoiler alert, is out there as well. And that's kind of why I feel like, they're shifting over more to that because they've been recruiting some longer, bigger corners who could bump and run a little bit better, who are a bit more physical up front, that can supplement more of that run stopping ability. And so not only is Cam Chappa, gonna thrive in this new UNC system, but I kind of feel like he's gonna do so because of some of the other guys around him and who they've recruited to help complement him. So just gonna throw that out there, and if this soundbite ends up being right in 4 or 5 years when, we finally finish like fourth in the Big Sky or whatever, then I'll take it. Is that fair?
I'll let you have it. And I'll let you take on this next prospect as well, right?
Yes. All right, moving on here. Let's talk about our number 4 safety here in the class of 2024, and that is Ponderosa's very own Carson Keach, the 6'3", 197-pound safety. This is a big boy right here, and I'm just going to hop right into it. First off, let me just talk about the top 2 ratings I gave him. Gave him a 9 in ball skills and an 8.8 in height and frame. Let me talk about the height and frame first. If you ever find a safety who's 6'3" and has close to 200 pounds as Carson Keach is, that's D1. I mean, that's Power 5, and that's as good as it gets, really. I mean, anything taller than that, in my opinion, is just a little bit too tall, and so there are always concerns there. And then, obviously, you want to see these safeties filled out, and so for him to be there right now as a senior in high school is absolutely insane. So love that, and I know colleges love that because there's a lot of versatility you could do when you got a guy at 6'3", basically 200, who has good athleticism. Now, let me talk about the ball skills here. Gave him a 9. This is a guy who also plays receiver. Like Cody said, from here on out, we're going to be evaluating guys potentially at multiple positions for a top 5 list, so I wouldn't be surprised if he potentially made our receivers list as well for the class of 2024. We'll see, though. We haven't gone there yet. But, as a receiver and as a safety in general, I mean, if there's going to be somebody that you don't want to test in one-on-one, it's this guy. On defense, he's going to come down with it. On offense, he's pretty much always going to come down with it. He just has an insane catch radius, can catch from multiple different angles, has really good hands. I mean, the best, some of the best I've seen in definitely the best in this class, but some of the best I've ever seen since covering Colorado high school football, man. I mean, he's going to go up and get it, and he's going to make a play, plain and simple. He's going to be a turnover machine on that next level, especially when you have him in the red zone. That's a dangerous guy out there. Now, I want to throw this out there. Gave him an 8.6 for zone coverage as well. Like Cam Chapa, he is very aware here. And he has to be because he's not as agile or quick or, fast as Cam Chapa, and so he has to anticipate a little bit more, and you see a little bit more of that when he's in zone, and so he does a really good job there. Kodey, I'm just going to kind of keep it rolling like you did here and just go straight to some of the things I'd like to see him work on here, but gave him a 6 for man coverage ability. Wasn't asked of him a lot here. But even then, I'm a little nervous about him in man coverage. I think he could be a little clunky. His agility / hip fluidity, I gave him an 8.1, which isn't bad. He moves well for his size. But when comparing him to other safety prospects, it's a little stiff, for sure. It's definitely a little stiff here. But he does get a pass because he's 6'3", 200. And I'm just going to be straight up honest there. And so that makes me nervous because when you put him in man, I don't know how many slot receivers or receivers in general you can man him up with. Even running backs make me a little nervous there. There you go. Would love to see him continue to improve that agility there. And I think in turn his man coverage is going to turn up. But like I said, I don't know if he's ever going to be just a guy that's going to be able to go one-on-one with receivers. And you're going to have to scheme around that if you're coaches, probably. Now, block shedding ability gave him a 7.4. This is actually the second highest out of all the top 5 safeties on this list here. So it's not that bad, but would obviously love to see him get a bit more physical. I mean, he's 6'3", 200. Would like to see him throw himself around a little bit more, kind of more of like a linebacker here. And, just get up in there, right? Get up in there, get good leverage consistently, and use those long arms to block shed. And so would love to see him continue to work on that skill here. Because I think at 6'3", 200, if you can't play man, then you got to be really good against the run at least. And so I think it's doable for him, but he needs to work on that block shedding, just really using that wingspan to, get separation and go from there. And, continue to be physical. I think this is a guy that could also put on more weight too and still be fine. So there you go there. But Carson Keach, 6'3", 200, athletic freak with great ball skills, but definitely some things to work on. Isn't that right, Kodey? And, what's your evaluation of him?
I'm in the same ballpark. I feel like the more that we watch players, the closer we get on our evaluations, honestly. And I have to absolutely agree that, what is there not to like about his ability to contest passes, make plays on the ball, and his size? The radius is huge as a receiver. And, something that I want to know about this batch of safeties, maybe even more so than any other year, is that all of these guys are pretty significant contributors on offense, with Chapa probably being, I don't want to say the least, but, probably the most defensive focused. All these other guys are asked to do a lot on both sides of the football, and Keach is no exception to that. And his ball skills translate right over. I also have him at a 9. This is legit. He's a legit baller with the ball in the air. Big arms, big reach, big wingspan, and big plays are bound to happen when Carson Keach is on the football field. And that, range as well helps him out with that pass contest consistency because, he could be very far away from somebody relative to other players, but because of his reach, he'll be able to get a hand in there and disrupt some passes as well. He's fast enough to boot as well. His speed I have rated at an 8.1. So that helps him cover ground pretty well. And, I think that he just does a lot of things very solid. His hit power is the second highest on this list, and I have that at a 7.9. So also pretty close as well. And yeah, I just think that when you are that size and you move the way that he does, that you're bound to make plays, and he reads the ball very, very well with those receiver-like instincts as well. So I have his zone coverage at a 7.9. I think that, it's not maybe the most versatile like zones per se, but the zones that he does cover are locked down essentially. Now, on the flip side, as we start to head down in scores, his agility / hip fluidity, it's not one of his weaknesses that I have down, but it's also not one of his strengths, I think. I have it at a 7.8. I do think that, he doesn't, shift directions the best, but I do think it's more of a mobility work issue, if I have to be 100% honest. So if he took notes from, guys like Ethan Atherton and, does some yoga and stuff like that, then we're in business here, and that's going to help him out pretty significantly as far as just changing direction, because I think that's all that it is. I don't think that he's not athletic enough to do so. I just don't think that the mobility is there to do that. So I think it's fixable, but 7.8 is still very serviceable. And, I think that it's mostly on display when he gets sucked into like play action and stuff like that, and he gets delayed on misdirection. So I think that if his hips are a little bit more fluid, it's going to amend that as well. Heading down the list just a little bit more, I mean, these are still at 7.6s, but they are tied for his lowest categories here. His block shedding ability and his run defendability. I mean, he gets in there, he makes plays, but I think that the biggest dent is that he is, getting sucked the wrong way or pushed the wrong direction with misdirection and stuff like that. So if he could just anticipate or watch film and view it a little bit better, or find where the key is for the offensive player, whether it's eyeballing a guard or a tight end and trying to read that for the run game, I think that would help him out pretty significantly. But it's still the second highest rated category. But, I think if he could just review film and have some keys in the run game, that would help him out a little bit better. Block shedding ability, it is actually the highest rated one out of all of these safeties here in the top 5, because, he is strong. He does have the reach, obviously, to keep defenders away from him. And, like, any receivers that have tried to block him on film, it's kind of a joke, honestly. But I just don't see enough of it against opposing linemen to give it a higher ranking. And then his man coverage ability, I mean, I've seen him in person kind of match up against, like, tight ends sometimes. So that's why it's at a 6.6. But they're not top 5 tight ends that he's matching up well against. So I think that's why it's not one of his higher rated categories here. So overall, his athletic prowess just pops off the screen. Elite ball skills, wields his size very well on the field. Some great hits and grittiness to play inside the box that does exist, which is why his run defend is the second highest out of all safeties on this list. But, I think that against some bigger receivers, he can be rolled outside if they're not guys that are going to hit him with a ton of moves. I think that his size helps him in those areas, as well as tight ends and whatnot that aren't like super speedster tight ends, but, more traditional tight ends I can trust him to play against. So that puts my overall grade, if I run down the line here, of man coverage 6.6, zone 7.9, speed 8.1, hip fluidity 7.8, hip power 7.9, pass contest 8.3, ball skills 9, frame 8.9, block shedding and run defend at 7.6. That puts him overall at a 79.7. And between Coach V and I's score, that puts him at a flat 80. So the lower end of, the 3-star scale. And Coach V, you mind if I talk about what I'm seeing on his Twitter for, some of these looks that he's getting?
Yeah, before you do, also gave him an 80.3 overall rating here. And then just some other things. 8.1 pass contest, 8 hit power, 8.3 top end speed. Just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, go ahead and talk about what's on his Twitter. What's the future looking like for Carson Keach here?
Yeah, so he's getting looks from the D2s as far as CSU Pueblo and Western. They've been recruiting him pretty heavily, making graphics and stuff like that. And who wouldn't want those looks? But I think that the most interesting development was, his D1 offer from Utah Tech. And at first I wasn't entirely sure what this was for, just because he is also a basketball player. But he has, Pondo football and Utah Tech football tagged. So I'm going to go with the fact that this is a football recruitment here. And I think that's a very interesting, I think that, the D2s are kind of a given. You'd be kind of a fool to not recruit Carson as a D2 school in Colorado. But I think that the Utah Tech is an interesting offer here. And, I kind of just want to pick your brain on these offers, Coach V. And what do you think of this Utah Tech offer?
Yeah, so I saw it in the offseason when doing their season preview. Look, I think this is a guy that can play D1. And I would actually say, as far as talent level and, everything about him, he's an FCS guy, straight up. And so I think this would be a good fit. I kind of wish he had more offers here, because I think he is worth, developing it. Look, 6'3", 200, has a really good skill set. You can't really teach that, can't teach 6'3", at least. So I'm a little surprised he hasn't gotten more offers, but at this point, I feel like that is pretty on brand here. He is definitely, maybe not definitely, I think he has maybe group of 5 or power 5 potential, but it would take a lot of development here. I think as far as FCS go, he would probably be able to play sooner, a lot sooner than later, and at least be able to get out there more situationally. Yeah. And be used in a pretty versatile way too. So we'll see, but I really am sure that he is an FCS guy. 6'3", 200. You can't teach it, and that goes a long way. It just does.
Yeah, no, I think that it's pretty on brand, and Utah Tech, seeing how they did this last season, he looks like a player that they need, to, he comes from a program of doing a lot of winning, being a big contributor in those instances, and has the versatility that, you would want from any recruit, and that flexibility to ask him, all right, let's see how you do at the receiver position. Let's see how you do at the safety position, and just kind of pick and choose where it could be. I do think that he should have way more FCS offers, but, what can you do other than continue to promote and talk about this guy like we are right now? So Carson Keach out of Ponderosa here. Coach V, who should get this next guy here? Are we just going to go 1-2, 1-2, 1-2? What's the game plan here? Actually, I want to talk about the number one guy, so you should at least take this, just to be sure.
Okay. All right, our number 3 safety here in the class of 2024 in Colorado is another 4A guy, and that is Windsor's Mikey Munn, the 6'1", 175-pound speedster over at safety. And you already heard it, speedster here. He is definitely one of the fastest safeties that we've evaluated here. Definitely I guess for me, he's tied for the fastest in this top 5 list here. And, let's just hop into it. Gave him an 8.7 for top end speed, 8.8 for ball skills. He has a listed a 4.5 40. That's his 40-yard dash, so he's listed a 4.5 40. I kind of feel like he might be closer to 4.4, maybe still late 4.4, but either way, that's legitimate, that's fast, and also to add on that he's 6'1 as well, running at that speed is absolutely insane. He's able to make a lot of plays just because he has the ability to just flip from, sideline to sideline and cover the entire field. It allows him to be a big-time playmaker, and he utilizes that really well, just having a great feel for the game as well. So there you go there. It's not just his athleticism bailing him out. But let's talk about some of his skills here outside of athleticism. I mean, I gave him an 8.8 for ball skills. He has really good hands too. This group in general, this top 5 safeties group in general, all have pretty good hands. They could all catch. They could all probably play receiver if they really wanted to. They're not stuck with the old DB label like, oh, if you can't play receiver, you play DB. No, he could definitely play a little bit of receiver and be big time there. And so those are the 2 things that really stick out to me about Mikey Munn. Now, as expected, the run defendability, block shed ability, hit power, those are some of his lower grades there. Hit power 7.5, block shedding 6, run defendability 7. I mean, he'll get in there and he'll do his thing, but it's just, I don't know. he definitely needs to put on weight. That's for sure. He definitely needs to put on weight, and I would like to see him be a little bit more willing getting in there as well. He's not as physical as some of the other guys we've covered before here, but with this speed, he's able to contribute a lot still in the pass game. All I'm asking is for him to do a bit more in the run game as well, because I think he could really get out there and cause some havoc, but he does need to get a bit more physical. Would love for him, or to see him, really get his hands into the pads of some of those blockers and some of those receivers as well, and set that edge sometimes, because he will be there to set that edge because he's fast enough. Theoretically set that edge, but he just doesn't because he's not as strong yet. Now he will be, but that's definitely something that I need to see happen first. Kodey, is that fair to say? And what's your evaluation of Mikey Munn? What are some of his strengths and areas of improvement?
Yeah, so to sound like a broken record here, speed, ball skills, and agility here, in that order, ranked 9.3, 8.9, and 8.7. Those are some of his highest grades here. I mean, he really just covers the whole field, which is another reason why his zone coverage for me is at an 8.8, just because he really does play sideline to sideline, but he can also make interceptions in the flats when tasked with those zones. So I like the versatility of him in zones, whether it's mid, deep, whether he's playing cover 1, 2, 3, or 4, he shows abilities in all of those looks. He shows ability to buzz the flats as well from the safety position and come up and make those plays. And man, if he makes an interception in the flats and he's in motion catching that football, that's going the other direction for 6. Honestly, there's no hope for opposing teams to throw interceptions to Munn in motion, as, that blazing speed really is. And I agree, it's got to be, I think, at least in game, it does have the appearance of like 4.4, 8, 9, 7, somewhere kind of in that range, I'd like to think. So that's why his speed is at a 9.3 for me. And not only is his listed speed very high, but I think an important thing when evaluating these prospects is, I look at their 40-yard dash time and whatnot if it's listed, but does it carry over to the field is really important to me, because some of these players, sure, they can run in a straight line with no pads on very fast, but when they put the pads on and they're forced to actually apply it in a football sense, that speed isn't as obvious, I guess I would say, for, those players, or it doesn't pop the same way that, it would, on just turf, right? With just shoes or, running cleats on and whatnot. So I think it's important to be able to do it with the pads on and in a game setting here, which he does do. Like I said, his agility, hip fluidity, I've seen him spin around and not really lose any speed, like literally do a full 180 and continue that track. So that's where that 8.9 comes from, turning around in coverage, going from one receiver to the next and making a play as well. And then his ball skills, he was amongst the leaders in the nation for interceptions, which I think is kind of crazy to say and think about as a Colorado kiddo. And, I think that the only reason, if that did fall off, I'm not sure exactly where he finished in the nation total, but it's because as they went into the postseason, the Wizards were relying on him more as an offensive weapon. Once again, displaying that speed and that hip fluidity, running the football as well, being a threat on special teams, returning kicks to the house. And this is kind of similar to a huge Windsor playmaker that we evaluated at a different position last year, in the fact that being able to contribute on special teams using great speed, athleticism, and size is going to help you get on the field a little bit sooner when looking at his outlook. And, he doesn't have like the craziest frame at 6'1", 175, but I mean, it's not a frame that's going to keep you off the field either. So that's why I have it rated at a 7.9, because it's solid. It's knocking on that 3-star. If he just needs to get probably a little bit heavier, but if it's at the cost of the speed, I almost don't even know if it would be worth it at that point. So that is something to debate. And then with that speed and the ability to play the entire field, even if he isn't getting a pick, he is making catches very tough. He can get his hand kind of like in that sweet spot, as a receiver, when you're going to catch that kind of in front of you on those like curl routes or anything like that, kind of over the middle. He's good at getting that hand underneath your arm and then going for the football as well, which is something that I do look at with that pass contest consistency, is how creative are they in, batting that ball or getting it away from opposing playmakers. So, and then looking at things that you could quote unquote improve on, he is the highest rated man cover here at a 7.6. Not crazy, but I mean, when you're that fast, you play with that much athleticism and speed, and you can blanket opposing receivers, like truly receivers that are running full routes from like the slot position where they roll him up into kind of like a nickel look. He has the capability to do it. Not the highest volume, which is why it's at a 7.6, but I mean, this guy is legit. And then, like Simon said, something that's kind of almost a gimme with these guys that do play a lot of that speed finesse game, lower scores for block shedding and run defend. But he did show some plays on the goal line where I think he did, he doesn't have the fear, I guess, that maybe I worry about for some of these smaller safeties for, playing in the box or up in there and getting dirty. He gets his hands up and he can move across the formation very, very well and make plays inside the box. And something else that I think is crazy is with his speed, there are plays where he's lined up, like, it's kind of ridiculous, honestly, watching it. He's 20 yards off the ball, literally 20 yards off the ball, and say the offense, it's like 3rd and like 15, they call a draw play. He's so fast that he can just get up there, stop it for like a gain of 4, and make plays inside the box with his speed, which is crazy. He has a taste for physicality, and he likes dropping a hammer on opposing players, which I think the tenacity and aggressiveness to do so is a very important step. Now, his hit power is still only rated at a 6.8 because, I don't think his hits are as devastating as he's intending them to be. But I think that they get the message across that he is willing to really put a shoulder into you and make you pay. I think that, something else that I considered in his run defendability being at a 7.2 is I don't think he takes great angles in the run game, but he definitely makes up for it with his speed. Like, there's times in his film, Coach V, I don't know if you saw this, I know that you saw this, but I'm just going to bring it up. He does not take the correct angle, and then he adjusts his angle, chasing the ball carrier, and still somehow makes the tackle. I think that is not going to carry as much over onto the next level. I think that he's going to have to be a little bit smarter with his angles, but his speed and ability to fill lanes with great anticipation on where plays go helps his run defendability still kind of knock on that 2-star door with that 7.2. And yeah, I think that is my biggest, obviously strengths and weaknesses. At the end of the day, I have him graded at an 80.9. I think that he does have the upside and the willingness to play inside the box. So I'm not as concerned about his hit power or block shedding ability as some of these other guys that maybe don't show as much as an assertiveness in that area of the field. Munn is willing to get down and dirty, and I think that is something to consider. And so between my score and Coach V here, Mikey Munn is landing at an 80.05, just narrowly getting that number 3 spot here. Coach V, do you have anything to add before I talk about what his offers look like at the moment?
Yeah, my grade, by the way, individual for me, was a 79.2. And I would have to agree with everything you said. His speed definitely bails him out of a lot of situations, but I think it's nothing that can't be coached. And if it can't be coached, then I don't know. I mean, at least he's still fast, and you could kind of hide some of those weaknesses anyways. But yeah, go ahead and talk about his future and his outlook here. What's it looking like, Kodey?
Well, I gotta be honest, I'm a little shocked and was a little shocked reviewing this just because this is a safety who has received national coverage from across multiple states and guys that, work with like SB and stuff like that. So it was a little surprising when I go through his Twitter, and see Black Hill State, Adams State, Western, and CSU Pueblo, all of which are fine and solid offers. I'm not like bashing on it. I just do think that his potential and his capability is higher than D2. And I mean, at the number 3 spot on the list and not having that different of scores from guys that are all kind of bunched in this 2 to 4 range, I don't know. I'm a little lost. I don't know if it's because of his size maybe, or because of how much offensive film they were showing that people maybe aren't evaluating him as much as a safety, which I think is more his true position than a running back, if I'm just being honest. So, I don't know. Coach V, what do you think of those offerings? And, I mean, he has had a game day invite to CSU, but I feel like this would be the kind of guy that they would give, like, maybe a PWO to instead of, like, an actual scholarship, just knowing CSU and Norvell. What do you think of that take, first off? I know, because you do have your opinions on CSU that I love to coax out of you sometimes. And then what do you think of his current offers as well? And do you see them maybe picking up here in the near future?
Yeah, well, that is the Norvell way, the skeevy car salesman way. So there you go there. I mean, yeah, look, I kind of feel like he just needs to shore up some of this other stuff here that's going on, because he has the speed, but he is a little bit of a raw prospect. I mean, and also a little bit lighter too. At 6'1", 175, he has received national attention, but at safety, you really got to do a lot of things right to be considered one of the top tier guys, and I feel like this position more than others, a lot of evaluators really take in mind, where they play as well. As in what state they play in. Do they play for a powerhouse? Do they play against other really tough competition that has great high-flying offenses? And I think some people are definitely disrespecting the talent he has also played against and are looking at it as if I don't know. I mean, it's fine, I guess. Obviously he played against Blake Barnett, but other than that, is there any other quarterback that should really be feared nationally that he's stopping? And the answer is probably no. So there you go there. Now, I do think he could play FCS ball. But he still needs to develop and whatnot. I don't think D2 would be the worst. I think he could really contribute right away here. You talked about, the things he did on special teams. I think that's a easy way to get on the field sooner than later. And then, continue to build him his way up and, get eventually to, playing some D1 ball, hopefully. But, we'll see. It's tough to make it as a safety if you don't have as complete a game as you can. And, maybe some coaches just view that as a little one-sided. And that's nothing on him, because I think it's all things that he could fix. But at this point, I don't think D2 would be the worst. I think if you're going to go D1, at least go somewhere where you'll get a chance. And I don't know if he will, if he was to get a PWO to somewhere like CSU. Just being plain and simple there. So, yeah.
I think something else to consider as well is, while he did get playing time his junior year, I think that the difference when you look at between him and Chappa, that are both guys that play the pass really well, but maybe not play every aspect of the game to the highest ability. Chappa has that one extra year of starting on varsity and just a bigger, sample size as well. So when I look at their recruiting, I feel like that also makes a pretty big difference. And this was the first year where he really was 12 interceptions this year was nuts. Last year, it was a lot of pass deflections. So I like to see that growth that he made. And I do think that obviously with the transfer portal, anything becomes possible, especially if he goes, maybe the, Jason Tommy way. I'm not sure what his, if he's going to be a guy that's on the move. But he was somebody who was, as a safety, we had kind of looking at that FCS level. And, he went to Grand Junction, made a ton of plays. Shout out Jason Tommy, by the way. And he was somebody who was winning like RMAC Player of the Week as a true freshman early in the season. So, there's going to be opportunities, probably more opportunities to make plays sooner and then try and build off of that heading forward. So I think that is a great point. And we have a literal example from last year who was one of our higher rated safeties as well. So there you go.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine. And I mean, honestly, if he did start last year, because you did make a great point there, he'd probably have more offers. If he had 12 interceptions playing guys like Cole LaCrue, Blake Barnett, Braden Dorman as well, because I'm pretty sure Vista Ridge played Windsor, then yeah, like he'd have a lot more D1 offers, but I mean, he didn't, and plus having a bigger sample size does matter. But honestly, I think he'll be fine. He does have a skill set and athletic blend here that is really hard to find sometimes. Like, you're just not going to find guys who are as fast as him with these ball skills, right? So I think he's going to do fine as long as he gets that opportunity. That's what matters the most.
For sure.
So, yeah, but speaking of some of the quarterbacks he played, Kodey, why don't you go ahead and talk about one of those guys here up next? Our first guy who he will definitely be on 2 different top 5 seniors lists here for the first time in PMC history.
Yeah, he's the only one that we know for sure so far, and that is the senior quarterback / safety out of the 4A state champions of 2023, Erie Tigers. That is Blake Barnett here, the Colorado sensation, the Colorado kid, honestly, having earned that title this past season by breaking Christian McCaffrey's Colorado 11-man total touchdown record. So Barnett here is, Coach V watched him and he texted me actually. He's like, we need to evaluate Blake Barnett at safety and quarterback. I'm like, wow, we've never done that before. But, we had kind of tabled it a little bit, especially earlier in the season going to that Broomfield Erie game. And once Coach V took a look at the highlight reel, he's like, no. Like, we don't really have a choice. We got to do it. And then I watched it. I was like, oh, holy crap. This kid is freaking fantastic. And, not only that, but I also having seen him play safety against Ponderosa in last year's playoff and taking over that game on the defensive side of the ball to allow him to play catch-up on the offensive side of the ball. I think that was important. And then, this past season, we got to see him play, like I said, against Broomfield more at safety, and he got a lot more snaps, I feel like, this past year on the defensive side of the ball. And, in the state championship that Gideon and I got to watch, he made a huge play in that game too. So I don't know what more you could really ask from him in this increased sample size that started kind of last year in the playoffs and then really became more of like a full-time job for him on this side of the football. And so while I've been kind of dancing around it a little bit, let's go ahead and talk about the exact numbers for Blake Barnett here. And I mean, I think that the easiest one to talk about is his height / frame. It's rated out of 9. It's the best frame on this list. 6'2", 215. I mean, and honestly, he could be 220 playing weight, even 225, and he's not losing a lot of these other aspects or qualities, in my opinion. And he moves very, very well at that size. If you haven't seen him, and his agility as a quarterback, it does carry over to, the quarterback of the defense, which is the safety here. His speed is at an 8.8 for me, and his agility / hip fluidity is also very solid at 8.6. That was kind of my go-to score, honestly, if you look at the rest of his numbers with pass contest consistency and ball skills as well. But, I mean, I think that the thing that separates him far and above everyone else on this list is his hit power at the crazy 8s, and he hits like a lunatic here. He's a violent athlete, flies over the field, leveling ball carriers and forcing turnovers through great ball skills, speed, and a good old-fashioned shoulder that rocks ball carriers. I mean, he just really plays all of those things well. His zone coverage ability is very solid at an 8.4. That is his primary level of comfort, I would say. And, he can play underneath zones. He can play those deep zones. and he can also move across the field and carry his zone and his level of impact. I mean, in this state game, they motion Palmer Ridge. They're inside the 10-yard line, I should mention. They motion left to right. Barnett slides across the formation. And I mean, his eyes never leave Derek Hester's eyes. And he does not get fooled by anything else that's going on him. I mean, Barnett, you'd think that him and Hester were in a hallway playing catch amongst themselves, the way that he just follows Hester this entire time. Hester throws it up, and honestly, like, the coverage overall by Erie was really well, but I don't even think that Barnett should have been the defender to make the interception. There was another guy that was in front of the intended receiver, but Barnett skied up for that ball, fully outstretched, and I mean, with the athleticism that he has, that's the kind of interception that he can make all over the field. Same kind of thing-ish happened last year against Ponderosa, where he just used great speed to make kind of a last-second jump on the football. He's somebody who has the speed to bait opposing quarterbacks, and having played quarterback and being recruited as quarterback, worked on as quarterback, yada, 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 he knows what's going through the head, he knows what the reads are, and he definitely utilizes that in his game at safety, which is what separates him, I think, the most from these other prospects that are playing wide receiver or running back who kind of can see the game through that lens. He knows where everyone is supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing, and he's very intelligent as well in the pass game, which does help his zone coverage ability out quite a bit. So, between that, his athleticism, he is somebody, and he loves violence. He loves putting his shoulder down. He is a football player through and through on both sides of the ball, and he's somebody who plays through pain because he likes to deliver pain just a little bit more. I kind of want to shout out that Marshawn Lynch quote. Oh, I'm going to butcher it. It's like, I know I'm going to get got, but I'm going to get mine more than I get got. And I think that that's the mentality that Barnett plays with, seeing that he does love to play both sides of the ball and, blow up plays on both sides of the ball. Now, Coach V, I want to hear what you have to say about, some of the positives here, and then we can jump into some things that he has to work on.
Well, you heard it here first from Cody. Blake Barnett loves violence, so there's that. But yeah, that's absolutely true though. And Blake Barnett, I will say this is a guy that wasn't sure about the whole quarterback thing. We always knew he was a great athlete. Like, he's probably one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen while covering this thing here in Colorado. That's just straight up, right? But, I want to shout out our guy, Ryan Wesley of Prep Red Zone / We in That Mode, and, we talked a lot during that Broomfield versus Erie game, and, he talked about how great he could be at safety and how much of a potential NFL guy he could be at safety. And at first I wasn't sure. I knew he played a little bit, like I feel like more his junior year, like he picked it up. Freshman and sophomore year, maybe not as much, I feel. But junior, senior year, that's kind of where he did it. And so wanted to look at the film, and it's not super long, but it popped out. Like, this is probably one of the most sensational highlight reels we've ever seen. And then just doing that research, it just kind of confirms all that, honestly. Look, 6'2", 215. Let me go into my athletic ratings for him. Gave him an 8.7 for top end speed there, 9 for frame. Obviously, he's a big boy. Agility, hip fluidity, gave him an 8.4, and I even think that could go up because he's not. He's more of a quarterback right now, I feel, than a safety, but I feel like he could really open up those hips, and so there's a lot of potential there for sure. And then I just gave him an 8.7 for his zone coverage ability as well. He's a smart guy back there. He knows what a lot of opposing offenses and quarterbacks want to do, and he consistently positions himself in the right spot to go make a play. Whether it's knocking someone out, whether it's using that little peanut punch, shout out Charles Tillman, and forcing a crazy fumble, or it's intercepting it. And, speaking of intercepting it, his ball skills are great. Gave him an 8.6. He made some pretty insane catches, and not just one or two, but 4 or 5. I feel like this season from the safety spot. Got to see him against Dakota Ridge as well. He made a great catch where he just absolutely mossed the receiver for a great pick there. This is a guy that, he loves the physicality of the game, and he could dish it out and play it really well. And, this is not exactly something I could rate, but I do want to mention this. His attitude on defense is awesome. I love it because sometimes you see some quarterbacks, they play defense as well, whether they're safety or corner, but they don't play with the same pride or attitude that Blake Barnett plays with. He plays like a guy that is the heart and soul of this team, not just on offense, but definitely on defense as well. He brings a lot of energy, and you gotta love that. As a safety, as a DB in general, you gotta be confident. The confidence has to come from somewhere because there's going to be plenty of times where it may not look great, and that's just life as a DB. And so that's definitely something that's, more intangible than anything that I really like about Blake Barnett on defense. But I mean, straight up, look, just a freak athlete at 6'2", 215 with a great skill set here. Something, like I said, that's really underrated as well is that little peanut punch. It forces a lot of fumbles. One that really stood out was against a Florida team in Vanguard who was really good. And he had this great forced fumble that absolutely got me hyped. And, he represented Colorado well out there, doing that. And yeah, I mean, he's had too many big plays on defense at that safety position for us to not consider him here. And so here he is right here at 2. But Kodey, do you want to talk about some areas of improvement before we talk, I guess, about outlook here just a little bit?
Yeah, no, for sure. So the lowest grades that I have for Blake are both in that 6 range. I have his man coverage ability at a 6. Once again, just something that isn't asked of him a whole lot, but you would think with his athleticism that it's not impossible to invest in that. And I mean, honestly, against tight ends that are more traditional, I don't think that they really can get open against him with his athletic ability. So I think that that's something worth mentioning. And then, his block shedding ability, I have at a 6.9. Nice. And, it's fine. He can get, receivers off of him. Those guys are not the ones that are going to block him or stonewall him. But just haven't really seen him enough against, offensive guards or anything like that if they're going up to the next level, or, wide receiver screens, mid screens and stuff like that, where he might run into those situations. Have not seen a ton of that. And then his run defendability, I have at a 7.4, which is not in red or anything like that. It's fine. But, I do think that watching his film, he's somebody, and watching him on the field as well, he's somebody who can get slowed down or just stunted a little bit with misdirection. But when he figures out and gets to the ball carrier, there will be hell to pay for sure. So that's where, kind of the plus on that grade goes up as well. And, I think that, yeah, he can use his hands, but it's not perfect and it's not his strength. It's not overwhelming. But, I think that something to consider here when looking at Barnett as a safety and, just as a prospect in general, I do like what you brought up as far as quarterbacks that do play the other side of the ball, that, they kind of carry themselves still like a quarterback, if that makes sense. Blake, when he's on offense, carries himself like a defensive player, honestly. He plays with that swagger. He plays with that tenacity, that aggressiveness, that, that showmanship, I guess is a great way to put it. And, I think that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but, he's a killer. That's what he is. And that's why he has, an overall grade of an 81.1 from myself. And combined with Simon, he's sitting at an 80.35. And talking outlook here, he is a Kansas State commit as a quarterback right now. But, I mean, you look at his sample size last season, as a junior, only 27 tackles and 2 picks. Like I said, they definitely started to turn that up as they entered the postseason. This season, more than doubled his tackles, had 3 tackles for loss as well, showing that he can get in the backfield sometimes. Doubled his interceptions, and I don't even know if that includes the amount, doubled his amount of forced fumbles like Simon was talking about with that peanut punch. And, just overall, with the increased volume, really showed that next level ability. And I do think that Power 5 upside at safety. And I mean, as an athlete, he definitely has that going for him just in general. So Coach V, he's committed to K-State. He has a gazillion offers to other places, mostly kind of that Big 12, formerly known as the Pac-12 kind of looks as well. What do you think of his commitment to K-State? And what do you think of, I mean, I feel like K-State is a school that's not afraid of tinkering with some players and giving them chances to kind of play both sides of the ball, or give them at least the looks in practice, and then doing what they think is going to lead to the most wins. What do you think of kind of that outlook? And I mean, honestly, I love the commitment for him as well, because he does have some familiar faces there as well.
Before I do talk about his outlook, I do want to mention some of his, areas of improvement. And I just want to mention this real quick because I gave him a 6 in man coverage ability and 6.6 in block shedding ability and a 6.8 in run defendability. But I feel like it's just because, I mean, he has to play quarterback, right? So you can't put it all on the line there. You can't just be engaging linemen and blockers and getting as physical as he wants to, because you have to preserve that arm, right? And you have to preserve your health as well. And so when you can avoid, those type of hits and whatnot, you got to, right? And as the season went on, you could kind of tell that went down, because it got closer and closer to the point where it was like, okay, well, we just need to win. So if I could lay this guy out, then I will. And so I really feel like those grades could easily go up if, he was just purely a safety, right? And as far as man goes, I don't know about man, though. That might be the only one where I'm like, I don't know. But I just think he needs reps there, and that could be fine. But, I say that because talking about outlook here, if there's any chance that he's going to be a quarterback on Kansas State's depth chart, they're not going to allow him to play safety, plain and simple. I know they're going to give him the chance to play quarterback, and so he's going to be able to compete and whatnot. I'm sure they'll bring in some, transfer portal guys to compete, but we just kind of got to see. The thing is with Blake Barnett, though, if that doesn't work out, I would not be opposed to him being open to playing safety and just maintaining that scholarship, because obviously you want to stay on scholarship, right? Like, you don't want your pride to get in the way of that. And as long as you're getting on the field, that's what matters too, because he can play both positions at a pretty high level, arguably safety at a higher level than quarterback, arguably, right? And so we just kind of got to see what happens there. Quarterback, I mean, still got to evaluate his film, so I'm not sure where he's sitting at right now, but as a safety, I definitely know where he's at, and I think he can be a starter for this team if he committed to safety. But obviously, see how quarterback goes, and that's the one that pays the most too, by the way. So obviously you got to see it through, right? You got to see it through. You got to go compete. But I would say if there's any chance that, hey, it's looking like maybe you might be the odd man out there, like they brought in too many transfer portal guys and are giving them too many chances, at least compared to you, then, if I was Blake, I wouldn't hesitate to go ahead and make the switch to safety as long as you keep your scholarship, and see what happens, because I think he could be a big-time safety. And, I'll just echo what Ryan Wesley said, what Coach West said. I think he could be a NFL guy. 6'2", 215, great athleticism, great skill set, not afraid of contact. I think he'd be perfect, honestly. That's not something you could teach, plain and simple. He has skills and athleticism that you just can't teach. Everything else from, the play calling and, different techniques and whatnot, you can, and that can be refined. And I don't doubt that he could work at that, because at the end of the day, Blake Barnett is a competitor, plain and simple. And, whether it's at quarterback or safety, I think he's going to be successful as long as he continues to compete and does what should I say here?
What's asked of him?
Yeah, what's asked of him, and, what's realistic of him as well. At the end of the day, you also got to make that decision to be like, okay, maybe I'm not a quarterback, maybe I'm a safety, and you got to commit to that. It can't be a begrudging thing. You know what I'm saying? Begrudging. That's a big word. But it can't be one of those things. You got to be bought in, man. It's either all in or you're out. Plain and simple. I don't think they're going to let him, dip his toes into both. So he might as well be committed. So there you go there. Does that make sense, Cody?
Yeah. I mean, you're studying for the SAT for one, so shout out that word choice. But no, I mean, it's cutthroat. It is Power 5 football. Everyone there is good. You know what I mean? So you got to choose when and where and how to be special, which I think is important. And, Blake, I think that the maturity that I saw from him in the state game, and speaking of Coach West, something that I talked to him about is it was the most locked in we've ever seen Blake Barnett. Like, he was still celebrating, but like, instead of chirping, which he does like to do, and the only way to stop that is to do something about it if you're the opposing team. But he did not do that in this state game. Not sure if it was because of the opponent, this, that, or the other, but he was just if he wasn't on the field, he was so focused on the game and trying to see basically everything he possibly could. It felt like he was like a robot, honestly, compared to the normal Barnett. And if that is the kind of maturity that he's heading towards the next level with, then I think that the world is his oyster. So, got to agree there. Coach V, before we talk about the number 1 rated safety on this list, we had some interesting honorable mentions and some very interesting stories amongst those honorable mentions as well. So do you want to kind of talk about some of these HMs that we had a chance to evaluate, or maybe some guys that also we wanted to evaluate, but they didn't have film or, injury or whatnot kind of interfered with that?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty concise here, or try to. We had a lot of guys: Marco LaPierre from Thompson Valley, Joel Lopez from Fort Collins, Kevin Hasley, Eagle Valley. The 2 guys we really wanted to evaluate, 2 guys from the same school that we really wanted to evaluate were both from Pine Creek, and Layden Robinson and Cannon Budge. And they just don't have enough defensive film. They obviously are looking more at the offensive side of the ball, it feels. So it is what it is. I mean, I just wasn't going to wait on them. It was taking too long. Then there's Caleb Tejada from, University. He had a great year, but just no film there to really look back on. And then Alex Padalino, he had film, but more offensive film than anything. So there is that. So a lot of guys, that we looked at, but one that I really want to mention here is Miles McClarty, the Fountain for Carson safety, who did reclassify. And it's because, and Cody, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's because he was diagnosed with leukemia a couple years ago, took a year off from school, from football to, obviously battle that, became healthy, and then played his senior year out here at 6'2", 160. And, this was a guy that back before, obviously, his diagnosis, he was definitely a top 5 guy probably for me and Cody in the class of, not 24, but in 23, where he was originally supposed to be at. And, I'm just going to be honest. Look, he was just left off the list. I had him at a 77.8 here. And he's arguably the best man coverage and zone coverage player on this entire list, of top 5 guys. It's just, you could tell that there's definitely a lost step here. Every game he got better, and you could see the strength coming back here. But I really do believe if he had one more year, he'd easily be on this top 5 list. And so that's someone that I really wanted to mention because I love his story. He's a great kid, has a great skill set, and I really do think he's D1. Now, if you're a D1, you obviously, you got to be aware and be like, okay, maybe not playing right away here, but give him a year or 2, and he could probably be a starter, if not a rotational guy for the team. And so I just really wanted to make sure we shouted him out because he was just barely off this list here. Cody, was there anything else you wanted to add to that before we moved on to our number 1 guy here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to agree with everything you said. I mean, he was 0.2 points for me graded below Cam Chappa. And I mean, like you said, somebody whose strength was coming back as the year went on and who just progressively got better and better, and somebody who really contested passes very, very well. And he was far and above the best man coverage ability guy. Shout out to that FFC secondary coach who basically all of those guys can play every single position in the secondary. Probably the most underrated position group in Colorado at a single school. I'm not going to lie. Those guys have, despite our consistent coverage on all of those guys. They have not gotten their flowers quite yet. But keep doing what you're doing. Not sure what your name is, but we see you and recognize you and appreciate you. And Miles, I mean, how, I'm almost tempted to use the word unlucky, because I mean, he really was the full package, and then had to literally battle his health to, stay alive, and then get back into school, and then get back on the football field. And he's battled through all of it. He's a super optimistic guy, even despite everything that he's been through. And, he's somebody who's very grateful for his support system, and I think just does everything right. He's a very cerebral player as well, who knows what he's looking at. And I mean, I think that it is, from like a university perspective, I see where Unco is coming from by offering a PWO, just because there is definitely some risk here with Miles. But with his tenacity and his aggressiveness, love for the game and love for his teammates, and the culture that he's going to bring with him, I am optimistic for his future here. And then, as far as those other guys go, Marco Lapierre, interesting. I think he's going to be a rugby player, which is very interesting that he missed some time to literally play in like some big time rugby games. So that was interesting. Joel Lopez, just a little bit on the raw side. Kevin Hasley, I see more as a cornerback on the next level, to be completely honest, and D2 kind of guy at that. So that's kind of my take on some of those other guys here. And then obviously the one that I'm kind of bummed out here to miss out on is Guthrie, who did get injured playing for Heritage early in the season. He's committed to Nebraska. But, Heritage, Schmeritage, right? Because the number one guy here on our list is an Arapaho Warrior, or I guess was on the football field as that season is over. And that is the 3-star rated athlete, Charlie Eckhart here. This guy has been on our radar for quite some time, and is somebody else who has a very strong chance at making potentially 2 different lists here. We still will cross that wide receiver bridge when we get there. But as far as the safety goes, I had a ton of fun watching his film. Coach V, didn't you also have a great time watching some good old Eckhart film? And I mean, it's been pretty awesome to watch this guy grow and develop over the past few years.
Yeah, I like how you're asking me so it doesn't make it look like you're just biased right now. But yeah, no, he's great.
What are you talking about? He's a
great athlete, and Kodey, go ahead and talk about what makes him great here, and I'll just supplement whatever you don't mention.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will have to admit, just maybe being a little bit of a homer here, but I mean, this is a guy who I've watched live, and I have, gasped at the plays that he's capable of making on both sides of the football. And I mean, the first time that I got to watch him live, I was like, this guy is going to be a top 5 guy at a position. The receiver bias, seeing an Arapaho receiver succeed always, strikes a chord with me, seeing as how they weren't super involved in the past. But, that aside, on the defensive side of the ball, and where, I talked to him in the offseason where he was getting a lot of looks up to that point, was at the safety position, and I totally see why. I mean, his ball skills I have rated out of 9. Once again, this is a receiver making great plays on the defensive side of the game here. And then zone coverage and agility/hip fluidity, both graded at an 8.7. Somebody who covers the entire field, sideline to sideline, and can make picks from sideline to sideline, making boundary catches, keeping his feet in bounds, getting into the flats, making some plays there. And to go hand in hand with that, his pass contest consistency at an 8.6. I mean, look, a lot of people might look at pass contest consistency and ball skills as 2 in the same, but it's absolutely not, because as a receiver, he understands where those vulnerable points are to get your arms in there, not get flagged, and to break up passes that you don't have leverage on, really. And he is somebody who's both knowledgeable and capable of pulling that off. And, any catch or throw in his direction, if you are going to catch it, it's going to be very well earned, because he is going to contest the freaking crap out of it. Top end speed, 8.6. He's fast in a straight line, and he's fast from sideline to sideline. He's somebody with interceptions that can take any of those to the house. At 6'2", 190 pounds, his frame sits at an 8.6 for me. So honestly, just very consistent scores across the board. And then something else that I want to mention is, while it's not the highest grades per se, I do have his run defendability graded as the highest out of this group at a 7.8, and I have his hit power graded at a 7.8 as well. He's somebody who gets up in there, he gets nasty, he can really lay down some big hits, and like I said, not the highest grades per se, but pretty high for this list, this top 5 list. He's somebody who I probably would trust the most to play in the box, both off of sample size and physicality out of all of these guys, just because, it is something that in that Arapo defense, everybody has to be willing to be a little bit nasty and play in the box, and they're creative. They'll send him on blitzes and whatnot from multiple angles. They'll roll him up against, run-heavy teams. He'll become more of like that linebacker safety kind of hybrid. And despite, not really having that, super physical guy that maybe we've seen in the past on lists, Eckhart is somebody who is willing to get in there, get his hands dirty, and, make ball carriers think twice about running his direction. And then something else that I wanted to mention about his top-end speed that kind of caught my eye and raised his grade a little bit for me here is he is somebody who, while I'm not a fan of the system, having seen this other player play live, that's Josh Snyder, I know that he's a quick athlete here, and Eckhart was able to catch him from behind on one of those, whatever plays. And, I think that spoke volumes because Snyder had a head start, and he's somebody who rips off some very long gains and has that kind of next gear as an individual athlete. And Eckhart is somebody who's caught him from behind. So I think that did wonders for me evaluating his top-end speed here. Coach V, you got to look at a lot of the same film that I did. Maybe didn't get as many chances to see him live as I did since, kind of made it a point. But you have got to see him play live as well. What is your evaluation on Eckhart? And feel free to talk about areas of improvement as well following the positives that you see.
Yeah, let's... he's just a great athlete all around. He's definitely a guy, like you said, who I don't want to say will probably make, but will be in contention to make our top 5 receivers list as well. But just looking at his grades, I gave him a lot of 8.6s and 5s. Gave him an 8.6 in agility, hip fluidity, ball skills, zone coverage, 8.5 in top end speed, height frame. He has a good frame at 6'2", 190. He's just a great all-around athlete. He's going to go up there, get it. He's smart. He knows how to play zone here. The agility is something that really stands out to me because he has real smooth hips, can get in and out of breaks well, just changing directions really well. And I kind of attribute a little bit of that acceleration to that because his acceleration is like truly special. Just his ability to go and make plays on the ball. And obviously he does play receiver, so those ball skills are going to be there, but you throw that with his exceptional athleticism and him being 6'2", 190 and, really filling out. He is a pretty good all-around athlete, and I'll just go ahead and talk about some areas of improvements here real quick. His lowest grades is a 6'4" man coverage, which, they didn't really ask him to do a whole lot of. And then I gave him an 8 for hit power and an 8 for block shedding ability. But even then, block shedding ability, that's the highest out of anybody on this list with an 8. And then as far as hit power goes, it's solid still. I think he could, continue to get stronger. I don't know if he's going to become a better hitter, but it's still good enough for the D1 level, which I think is where he belongs here. But, with guys like this, it's just not every day that they are so well-rounded as him, and the guys who are well-rounded are guys who, are the best at their position. Isn't that right, Kodey?
No, absolutely. I think that we have preached it since day one, and we're going to continue to preach it, that versatility is what wins you spots on this list, and it's what wins you football games as well. And Eckhart is just a model of that, honestly. And, the reason that he's going to be here at this number 1 spot is because he just does everything a little bit well. To go off of some of the lower grades, I mean, his man coverage for me was still at a 7 just because, I did get opportunities to see him man up against slot receivers and keep up with them with his speed, with his agility. So I think that that's important. And his knowledge of the receiver position and ability to execute at the receiver position, I think also helps him out here. And then, his block shedding, once again, not the strongest, but the second highest rated that I have in here, just because I think that especially there's a lot of cross position coaching from my knowledge at Arapo. And I think that, when you train with and practice with those outside linebackers and those middle linebackers and stuff like that, that is going to help you in all areas of your game. And so I think that that's something that has helped Eckhart out a lot. And, playing in the box and whatnot, those reps are just going to add up for him. So even with it being at a 7.4 and his man coverage at a 7, those are still kind of light, low numbers comparatively to some of the other players that we evaluate at any position. So that's why his grade overall for me, climbing down the list, just top to bottom, 7 man coverage, 8.7 zone coverage, top end speed 8.6, fluidity 8.7, hit power 7.8, pass contest 8.6, ball skills 9, height/frame 8.6, 7.4 for block shedding, and 7.8 run defend. That adds up to an 82.2. Coach V, do you want to just run through your list top to bottom just to reiterate that total number there? And then we can talk about his total grade and then his outlook and offers on the next level.
Yeah, some of the other things I gave him. Actually, I think I might have went through everything, but I'm just going to go through it one more time. 6 man coverage ability, 8.5 zone, 8.5 top end speed, 8.6 agility / hip fluidity, 8 hit power, pass contest consistency, 8.2, ball skills, 8.6, height frame, 8.5, block shading, 8, run defendability, 8.3 for an overall grade of an 81.3. That being said, Kodey, I think he's a D1 guy, at least FCS here, if not higher. But, what's his interest looking like moving forward?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag here because, might I add, that it's not enough for Charlie Eckhart to be a stud at receiver, to be a stud at safety, and to do everything a little bit right on the defensive side of the football and a lot of things right on the offensive side of the football. But he's also a brainiac here. 4.2 GPA. And, I have some family that goes to Arapo, and that is the first thing that they talk about more so than his athleticism is, he's really smart. And, shout out my cousin, whose name I'm not going to drop on here, but she could hit the books a little bit harder. But anyways, now that I'm done dragging her through the mud, he has a ton of offers from, those Ivy Leagues. I'm looking at the Princeton, I'm looking at the Cornell, I'm looking at the Harvard. I'm not sure if Columbia is in there and Penn as well, but I know that those are, more cerebral level schools as well. So he has all those offers, but they don't do a whole lot of scholarship action with football. So I would not be surprised if he turns to look at his offers such as University of South Dakota. He has an offer to Air Force, which was his second offer after CSU, kind of a rare CSU offer in the house. And I think that it's going to go a long way that, he was offered by them first, but he's also been offered by Nevada, which was his most recent one, and Washington State. So group of 5 action and Ivy League, kind of a mixed bag, like I said, just because I feel like Ivy League is a little different, and then, some FCS looks and whatnot as well. But I definitely think he's a group of 5 athlete looking at, his ability on both sides of the football. And, I'm excited to see a lot of this Mountain West interest, especially because Mountain West teams are going to have chances to play against what is left of the Pac-2 as well. Not to, kind of rub dirt in the wound there, but I think that there's a ton of opportunities for him to get quality looks against high-level programs and prove his worth as a next-level athlete. Coach V, there's a lot of choices here. Is there too many choices to look at for Eckhart here? And, what do you expect? I mean, I know that he's somebody who really values, football and whatnot. So I feel like the fact that Ivy League doesn't have that athletic scholarship has got to play a role in his consideration here, does it not?
Yeah, probably, and it's never a bad thing to have too many choices here. It's good to have a good variety, right? But he does need to really prioritize and, just think like, okay, what do I want? Do I want a big Ivy League education, or, do I want to be a little bit more financially free here and be on scholarship somewhere, which, personally, I would love to not have debt. That's just where I'm at personally. But, obviously I've went through it and everyone's different. And so we'll see what happens here. I mean, look, he can play on the D1 level, and I think he'll be fine on that level. There are some programs that I think maybe might even still look into trying to pursue him last minute, even though, in my opinion, they would be punching up. I feel like he'd be a perfect fit at Colorado School of Mines, who, by the way, today, as of December 9th, will be playing for a chance to get into the national championship. So that's really exciting there, and, they could obviously give him a scholarship for that too. And, he's obviously smart enough to be there. And then obviously would love for UNC to pick him up, if not for safety, for receiver. And I think that would go a long way, but we'll see. Also Stanford, I should throw them out there. I kind of feel like they'd be punching up, but they could still offer a full ride. So there you go there. But a lot of opportunities for him. Regardless, just excited to see that he has those opportunities because, he is a smart guy. He has a great skill set, great athlete. I think he'll be just fine moving forward here. So there you go there. But yeah, I mean, don't have too much more to say about Charlie. I think he'll be fine wherever he goes. It's just up to him, plain and simple.
Yeah, I think that he has a lot of things to consider, and I'm excited for him because I know that at least when I talked to him last spring, it hadn't really picked up the way that it has kind of over the course of this season, and more so over the summer and fall as well. So I'm very glad that it did pick up for him as he started to wrap up his junior year and head into his senior year. Because, I mean, the talent has always been there from his sophomore year where he was making, game-winning touchdown grabs to his junior year where he would sometimes be the only source of offense for the Warriors to this year where, some of the weight was lifted off of him offensively and he was able to really just cut loose on defense and nab this number one spot here. Coach V, do you have anything else to add before we review this list and go into our outro? Or are you just going to
I'll just take over here. I don't have anything to add if you don't. All right. Nope. Well, with that being said, going from 5 to 1 here, our number 5 safety in the class of 2024 is Eagle Crest's Cam Chapa, also the UNC commit. And then at number 4 is Ponderosa's Carson Keach. Number 3 is Windsor's Mikey Munn. Number 2 is Erie's Blake Barnett, committed to Kansas State. And number 1 is Arapahoe's Charlie Eckhart. A great group.
Go Warriors!
A great group of safeties all together here, man. I mean, there's always solid safeties here in Colorado who can hold down the back end, who are talented, who have great athleticism mixed with a great frame. And so that doesn't really change going into this next senior class here. And so, per usual, really fun to cover. And if you want to hear us talk about more seniors in this class of 24, go ahead and show some love on social media at Playmakers Corner so that you know when the next top 5 seniors episode is going to drop. But by this point here, we would have already dropped tight ends and linebackers with more to come. So make sure you go ahead and follow us there so you could be updated on all the information. That's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and X. At Playmakers Corner is where you can find us. And, go ahead and leave us a good review or comment as well. We love to interact with y'all a little bit more here. So there you go there. But I've been your co-host, Simon Villanos, a.k.a. Coach V.
And I've been your other co-host here,
the other
Cody
one.
Stauffer. And peace.